Hello everyone. For this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to make a simple whack-a-mole type game. The object of the game is to right-click on the orange square before it randomly chooses a new spot. When you're done, you hit stop and it'll display your score. For this tutorial, I've already created the project. I named it Tutorial 2. I've already placed the UI elements, so you'll notice that there are 4 rectangles, a start button, and there's also a label with nothing in it. You'll notice too that the button, all it has is some properties enhanced on it, so color and font. The label, its contents are empty, and the rectangles all have been given a name. Now for each rectangle, I'm going to add a mouse down event. Last time we used clicked, but this time we're going to use mouse down so that we can capture that right mouse button click. I'm going to give it the name of rectangle mouse down, and I can use this one event for all 4 of my rectangles. This is done by pointing the same handler to the mouse down event for all 4 of the rectangles. Next, we're going to add a click event for our start-stop button in order to be able to start and stop our game. Now that we have our UI and our event handler set up, we can start creating our content for our event handlers. So here I'm going to access the button that is being clicked through my sender object. Next, I need to create some kind of flag to know when I am playing and when I want to start playing. So I'm just going to call this is playing. It's going to be a bool, and at first I'll set it to false, because we'll start the game off in a start state. And then now I can put my flag down in my button so that I know on this click I want to start the game. So the first thing I want to do is change my flag so that the button will now represent that it will be in we are playing, and the next thing will be in the stop state. So we also changed the content. I'm going to change the border brush as well as the foreground color, so the text color, just so that it's a very clear indication that we've gone from the start state to now the stop state. Finally, I just want to make sure that my label, my score label, is empty. Now for the stop state, we essentially want to do the same thing, just reverse. So we set our is playing to false, we change our button content back to start, and change our colors back to green. On the other hand though, for our score label, now we want to actually display the score. We haven't calculated it out yet, so I'm just going to just temp it out and just put our score. So now we can run it, and we can test out our button to see if everything is working the way we expect it to. Alright, so now that we have our button working, we can go in and handle our mouse down event on a rectangle. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a list of all my rectangles so that I can easily access which one gets colored and when. So for my mouse down event, I'm going to need a score variable as well as a total variable, just to keep track of what questions get answered correctly and how many questions there are in total. So inside our mouse down event handler, first thing we're going to check to see if we are in the is playing state. Then we need to check to see if our event arg for the right button is in the mouse button state of pressed. So this tells us that we have received a right button click. Now that we know that the right button has been clicked, we need to get the rectangle that was selected. So which one of the 4 was clicked on? And we do that by we just create a response rectangle, and we get this straight from the sender. Now that we have our response from the player, we can check it against the answer. but we need to create our way of determining what the answer is for each round. So for each round of the game, it's going to be on a timed event. So we need to add in the system library timer, okay, so using system timers. Then I'm going to create a few more class variables. First one I'm going to create is an int for the answer of which rectangle is the answer. And then I'm going to add in a timer, just call it a timer. And finally, I'm going to add in a random. So this will be our random number generator to decide which of the 4 rectangles will randomly be the orange one, which will be the answer. Inside my main window, underneath my instantiation of the rectangle list, I'm going to also instantiate my random object. And I'm also going to set up my timer. Okay. To create a new timer, you just go new timer, and inside the constructor you pass in milliseconds how long you want the timer to go for. In this case, I've set it for 500 milliseconds. This is a bit faster than the beginning demo video of 800 milliseconds, but we'll see how it goes. Then you have to add in what happens when the timer is up. So you say the elapsed time, and you add in a handler, and I called mine on-timed event. You can name it whatever you like. The on-timed event will fire every 500 milliseconds. Next, we need to say whether or not we want it enabled right off the bat. I'm setting this to false because I want it to start and stop on my button click. So let's go down to our button. Inside of the when the start button gets pressed, I want to start my timer. So I say atimer.start. And when the button gets pressed again on its stop state, I want the timer now to stop. So every time my on-timed event handler gets called, I want to change the answer for this new round. And I also need to change the colors of the rectangle. So first I'm going to get a random number using my random number generator from 0 to 3 for the answer. This way I can just access it from the list. Next, I'm going to change the rectangle's fill color so that they're all set to blue, and then I will just set the answer to be orange. So first we go for each rectangle inside of our rectangles list. I want to take my rectangle and set its fill color to brushes.blue. Now if we start this, you're going to get an error when we start playing this game. So what's happening here is the error you're receiving is because you're doing UI on a different thread than the UI thread. So the quick fix for this is a simple line of code where we will force the UI thread to update immediately. Don't be too worried about this. As long as you have this exact bit of code that I've given you, then your UI should update fine. Just make sure that you put everything that is UI related inside of a timer inside of this dispatcher method. Okay, so you can see here, you see that our code now runs, and now I'm going to update the answer to be an orange rectangle. Now that we have our answer and the user can see it, we can now handle it inside of our mouse down event. To check to see if we have the right answer, we just need to say if our response is equal to our rectangles at the index of the answer, and if they are equal, then we want to update our score. Next, inside of our on-timed event, we need to track how many rounds have been played. So this is our total variable. Now that we have our score and our total, we can update that in our UI. So we can update our score label by adding in our actual score divided by the total amount of rounds. Finally, we want to reset the rectangles so that they're back into the start state and no longer blue and orange. And for this, we just do the same as we did to set them to be blue. So here I set them back to being the gray that they were at the beginning. Next, we also need to reset the score and the total for the next round of the game. Now we can start our game and we'll see if it works. So we can see here, we can hit start and random orange does get displayed, and every 500 milliseconds it's changing, and we can right click to see it, and when we stop, our score is then displayed. If we start again, everything gets reset and we can play another round, and when we stop, we will get a different score. All right, thank you for listening.